everybody. This is Nephew SIG Automation meeting for Wednesday, September 13th. Let me bring up an agenda. So, Bala, the first thing on the agenda, we wanted to do the status update. So if you want to quickly give an update on the sort of release in general. We have a few other things on the list here, so I want to be sure we try to keep this pretty tight.
Yeah, so I updated the board. The board is there. So I put the sprint such that it's gonna end next Friday, the first sprint, because of all the work and stuff, we could not track the first sprint in the last week. So it's gonna end next Friday. So John, I would think at either today or tomorrow we need to get to the regular issue by issue status thing.
Yeah.
Right now I have created multiple epics. One, obviously, the one with the OAA stuff is progressing well. Obviously, we need to now that thanks to you added Joseph to the GitHub org. Once he responds, probably I can assign some issues, but all the issues are there for the OAI integration. And I have created an epic for the multi-vendor infra as well. But that's I need to work with Vim to create more issues on that particular epic. And I have created epics and issues for the technical depth. One for documentation, one for the CI/CD quality kind of stuff. So right now they are there. They are also on the board. Some of them have been assigned also. Some of them will be assigned once Joseph comes on board with our GitHub org. And there are some other issues that are already there, such as the topology controller, things like that. So we need to probably do the same thing like we did the last 2 days, that we need to go over the board and then get to that discipline, John. Maybe we can do that tomorrow's call as well, since we have the call tomorrow's call.
That's what I was thinking. I had it in my, I'll remove it here because, yeah, I think tomorrow should be basically the whole meeting should be just going through the board and making sure we, we get everything assigned and get things really in motion.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Bala.
Yeah, that is there. So probably I think, I think we are hopefully if we are close to what we did in the first release, I think we should be in a good shape. Thank you,
Okay.
John.
Awesome, thank you, Bala. Wim.
Yeah, so I'm trying to start a conversation on a new channel that I created, but we seem to be discussing more the channel name than the content. So my question, what I wanted to discuss here on the team is, okay, the channel, I mean, the reason I created the channel because it allows for distributed progress, right? But there is a disagreement. So who has the authority to go to make a decision on what to use and stuff like that? Is it the lead, or because there's two people disagreeing? I've asked a bunch of questions because I wanted to focus on the requirements to start making progress there, because that's where everything starts. But that's the current state.
Okay, so I haven't really been following that. So I don't know that it matters what channel we use, but is the question what channel we use, or is the question what's the next step? Like, I think we need to agree on the.
No, see, I started the conversation, but then we basically said we should not start this conversation unless we know we put it in the right channel. So it's a bit of a, in my view, stupid discussion, because in release 1 we basically said, okay, we create 3 channels. Now we have 5 topics, so we create 5 topics and then we move forward, right? Because for me the channels are just to make progress. The name shouldn't matter as much. So, and I call it NF2 infra because that's the topic. So we should, in my view, we should just use it and move forward. And
But we have two. I think that what was confusing me, Vim, was that we had two info channels. That was all.
Yeah, but we have, so there is lots of, so all of these channels get created at random, right? There is no discussion upon, right? So for me, I felt that the channel that we had were not appropriate, right? So I basically, that's why I created a new channel, because it's basically the discussion between NF and infra. And it's not pure infra, right? So it's basically the combination. So it's very clear in my view for, if you people know, who are working in R2, on the topic, they know exactly what to go for. So
you're saying
that's why I did it.
The specific R2 topic of this, not to infrastructure in general.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, the relationship of NF with respect to infra. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So it's the relationship between the two, right? So and the questions we have is, okay, which requirements do we put in place and stuff like that? Because the requirements will be in the NF, not on the infra. So it's that whole thing that we discussed last week.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters that much. It's always public on Slack anyway. So
so I'm the one.
We are not archiving. We are not archiving. We are not archiving the channels anyhow. So for me, they are just there to make progress. So I think, yeah, I want to make continue and focus on the topic rather than on the naming of something.
So to me, it's not, the issue isn't the naming. It's as Liam said, there are two channels. I just want to make sure that there's as much visibility as possible for the people interested in certain topics. So if people have subscribed to the infra channel and they don't know about this new channel, or they weren't invited to this new channel, then they might not see any of these conversations. But if they subscribe to infra, they're probably interested in any discussion regarding infra. So that's my point.
But so Tal, the channel of infra was not, there was never a discussion on who was participating. So that has never happened, right? And so I basically put both to SIG architecture and SIG automation. I basically told them, I'm going to create a new channel and this is the topic, right? So if you are interested, please join. And I added the people who were asking to be part of it from the beginning. But I made it clear that we created this channel, which hasn't happened for any of the others. So don't tell me that the people are not aware about it, because it was made clear into our three main channels, or two main channels that we have on the SIG working groups that are involved.
So if you wanted, okay, so let's let's discuss. The point is,
so there is two discussions. So your point, so Tal, your point is the people of infra are not involved. I disagree, because I made it clear in SIG automation and SIG network architecture that we are going to have this discussion on this channel. So that point, in my view, what you're trying to make is not relevant. The second point I'm telling you is that all the channels that were created ad hoc without any mention to anyone that they exist. So, in my point,
sure.
my view on your feedback is completely not relevant.
So look, if we let's discuss. Yeah, they were ad hoc. We didn't have any policy for Slack management until now. Maybe it's time to discuss. What we want to do with them. So I created
That's why I'm bringing up the topic.
Yeah, sure. So I created the discussion channels because my point was to bring birds of a feather. People are interested in certain topics together to discuss. So I think maybe if we want to create channels for specific work, then maybe let's not call them discuss. Maybe call them something else. I don't know, maybe a work channel or a team channel or something like that. Yeah, maybe just do some hygiene in the channels in that respect. You also called it discuss rather than discussion. You changed the convention. Sure, you're right. I mean, all of us can create any Slack channel we want, right? There's no issue there, and I didn't mean to derail any kind of discussion there. I answered specifically to that, but I'm not stopping anybody from discussing the issues you raised. The specific work issues. So I don't know. Do we want to create like specific team, you know, or
Yeah.
task force. Maybe we can call them channels for somebody working on a very specific topic.
I think
Should
we
they be
do.
separate
We
from the
did,
general channels? I don't know. We just have so many channels, right?
I think that, so I think that it's useful to have a channel for a work group, and that's fine. Although you can also just do it directly in the main channel. Don't have so much activity in Slack that it's a huge deal. But yeah, I think it's useful to have. Personally, I would, yeah, like have fewer channels and just have the discussions in the
John, you're
main.
breaking up. Is it me? Is it me, or is it everyone?
I can hear John quite well, actually.
Yeah, we can hear John.
Okay.
Maybe
So
just, yeah.
Anyway, I was just saying, like, in general, I would say that it makes sense to break something off into a separate channel for a work group temporarily while we chug through something. Other than that, it probably makes sense to do in the main channel unless things get really like in depth, you know, like we're still small enough. I think Tal, you just said we have a lot of channels. I don't know that we need as many channels. So I think we just, I don't know. I don't want to derail this whole conversation about this. I think that if we want to have a separate talk in another meeting about this, but we have a lot of things on the agenda, like I would just go with the assumption that, yeah, we can have a channel per team or work group to focus on one particular delivery in R2, and separate channels that are for general discussion. But even general discussion, I would almost prefer we just keep in the SIG channels unless there's a real reason, you know, unless it's so active that we need a separate one. That's my opinion. And I guess, is there any disagreement with that, or should we just move on to the next thing?
Thanks, John. I tend to agree with that. I just wanted to add one more thing with the, so if a new channel is created, probably if the creator of the channel can mention that in the SIG automation channel that such channels is created for this purpose. Anybody interested, please join. That's kind of a public announcement. That would also make it very easy for the interested parties to go know what's going on and to join them. That's the only thing I wanted to add. Otherwise, I'll agree with whatever you said. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, looks like Wim's having trouble anyway. So why don't we move on to the next one, Sagar?
Yeah. So for me, okay. So one thing I want to mention is that I had this discussion internally in my team for the license. And everybody agreed that there is nothing really, let's say for the moment, there's nothing really big what's there, because the operators which I made, they're quite specific for Nephew for the moment, and there's nothing very 3GPP specific. So they all agreed to that I re-licensed it in BSD clause 3, and I told Bala also. And that's I'm gonna do that, and then I will create, and then we already have an ICL, we have a CLA for that. I just have to put that in our GitHub, and because for us it's all manual, we have a PDF for people to sign, so I have to do that automatic on GitHub. I'll do that. If anybody wants to come and contribute and help me, they would be welcome. Now I think would be the barrier will be quite nice. There's not much of a barrier. This just SCLA with the 3 clause BSD. And then the next thing what I did also is that I created the demo which I showed on the repository which I shared with everyone, and that they were never kept packages for the RAN and the UE. So I created that. For the moment, I only use Starlock because that was enough. I just wanted to make very small changes in the config maps of Gnode B. So Starlock was enough, let's say, for the moment, because I didn't know that I can use IP claim and some annotations to get the IP address of another network function, which has been assigned using IP claim. So I just found that, and I used that to get the AMF IP address in Gnode B. And I think that's the way also you did it for UE Sim. So I just created that and I am testing it. So, and then I made, then I shared also last week, I think that I am using config refs to handle the configuration. And now I have to make a package of Scapper, because as I mentioned earlier that I will be using Scapper for sharing for exposing the server, the SBI interfaces all in all the 3 clusters. So I will use Metal LB, and then just for DNS I will be using Scapper. But for that, I need the capability for secrets, to share secrets between 2 different clusters. And we don't have any object for that for the moment, let's say, in which I can, if I create one secret in one cluster and it automatically goes in another cluster, or if I'm able to fetch like IP claim or config ref, something like that. So we don't have any capability for secret for the moment. So that is a blocking point for me. So I have to figure out how to do that.
So that's going to vary in the environment, right? So like in the sandbox environment, which is mostly what you're working in right now, we have to run something to do that if we're going to do it, right? We'd have to run Vault or something. In a cloud environment, the cloud providers usually have their own sort of secret manager type of things. And then usually there's different ways to access it in Kubernetes. One is there's a CSI driver that will mount secrets from a secret manager into a pod. That's, I think, the way people are usually doing it. There's sealed secrets, which is kind of, you can embed the secrets encrypted in your configs. That's another option that doesn't require us to run any separate software. Well, it might require a controller or something. I'm not sure. I haven't really used it. But those are some ideas. We have a separate issue on secrets management. You may want to start a conversation there.
Okay. I'll do that there, because I just want something which is more acceptable by everyone. Because if I do something only for this, let's say for this POC, or I don't know, for R2, or even just this particular diagram and blueprint which I showcased, then it would be very specific. I just wanted something which is more acceptable, by everyone. So
Yeah. I think we need to have a longer discussion about this. So
yeah, that's it.
Either on an issue or on Slack. So there is somewhere in there, there's an issue that says like revise how we do secrets management. And then you can put a comment on there with what you need, your requirements, and then we can start to talk about the requirements around other secret management issues. We have other areas we need secrets and things. So
Okay.
let's try and gather the requirements and figure out what the right solution is. Because one requirement is that in different installations, it's going to work differently, right? So we have to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. That's it for me. I mean, there's nothing much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sagar,
Yeah.
one thing is that I just raised my hand. So the thing on the config refs, right? I built a presentation yesterday for the SDK as well. I don't know whether we have time today, but it would be good to discuss this as well if you're using it, to see how you're using it, because there might be implications and stuff like that. So on that, but depending. So I put the presentation that we discussed yesterday. You can listen to it. I don't know whether I have time or whether we have time today to discuss this. But I put some, let's say, presentation together with respect to config refs and the various options and implications of using them.
Okay. Thanks. I yesterday meeting I couldn't attend. I'll just check it. It was just that I just made an effort to change everything. I will see how much effort I have to make. Now.
No, I hope not. But I think it's important because it will. So the reason it's important is that if we continue on the way we are doing, there is certain implications around it, and I think that's what the presentation is trying to address: is to see, to make people aware about the various options. And then second, we can decide potentially certain things, so that's basically what the presentation is about. I don't think I would change anything for you. I just wanted to show that the presentation gives you awareness of the various options. What I would like us to do is to discuss this and potentially make a decision on how Nefio would work with them. And in that case, depending on that decision, we might have to do some changes, but even changes on the existing, even in what we did in R1. Okay, so that's what the presentation is trying to do.
Okay, I'm perfectly fine with this. I'll just have a look now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ravi.
Yeah, so Sagar, I was kind of looking forward for the discussion on the CRD that you proposed, Joseph and you. So is that something you would be discussing in SIG 1, or was it like for
That's
this group?
it's on the
Or
agenda after the status here, Ravi. So we just have to get through the status. That's our next agenda item.
oh, okay, got it. Okay,
Yep.
I didn't know it was split. Okay.
It's okay. Okay, next then, yeah, the tech track is fine. Like I think we need to do the sprint planning, which we're going to do tomorrow. I have a few things I need LGTMs on, and this is something, if folks are interested, might be worth taking a look at. This is about some additional features for how we can construct function inputs that will simplify things, I think, but it requires, a little more plumbing. So nothing really more to say on that. If there's no questions, we'll just go to Stephen.
So I'm linking the, I wrote a POC doc, which there's a lot of opinions on this. So if you have other opinions with on the doc would be nice. But one thing I'm most concerned with was there's feedback that the assumptions where the POC is based on is the operator SDK would be something we use, but it seems like there's some shortcomings. So I started to have some discussion with Fiacra on this on the channel. So we'll see how it goes. So yeah.
Okay, so that's under discussion now. So if anybody's, that's something people have an opinion on, where should they should jump in on that document, or you have a meeting scheduled for that?
Well, we have Tuesday meeting all the time, but then so I don't want to wait for next week, so that's why I triggered a discussion with Fiacra on the channel now. And in terms of POC doc, please go ahead and comment.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Subash, any updates on policy?
Hey John, actually this week I don't have any update. I was in a vacation, so I returned back. So probably next week I'll give the updates.
Okay, great. And then Fikra?
Yeah, like Stephen said, we're still, well, we haven't made a huge amount of progress on digging down on Operator SDK. I think Tal maybe posted as well. Just it would be great if we could get some Red Hat guidance or not guidance, but just feedback on what we're doing. Are we using it wrong? Is there more to it than meets the eye? But yeah, there are some. The POC, as I said last or on the last meeting, maybe I was looking to get feedback, maybe, or just some maybe guidance, steering on where we should go next, because we tried to basically swap out the ACM components using the Operator SDK as a substitute, and I think due to networking and config, I think it was bit more than we could handle manage manually. But yeah, I think it's probably worth having another look, or maybe getting some guidance from Red Hat if at all possible.
Okay, do we have anybody, Alexis or anybody from or Bala? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. So Tal, I think
Yeah,
Tal.
I'll try to.
I think Bala said that he's gonna look for someone to help out.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay. All right, that's our status. A little bit over. Thank you all.
Just very quickly, John. In terms of the Helm, so we were proposing to do up a kind of what's the guide videos, just in relation to Flux. So I think we'll probably have something for that as well. If that's useful, it's there. I know it's not, it's the second option, if you like, or the lower priority option, but we were proposing to put something together for that as well, just in relation to Helm.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Okay. Great. Well then, thank you all. I mean, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow getting a little more concrete handle on execution. We'll see where we are after that. And I guess we have about half an hour left. So let's start with Sagar and Joseph. I will stop this sharing in case you have anything to share.
So while they're doing that, just a 10-second update, John, Timo and his team from Nokia are willing to help on professional documentation. So probably I asked them to join the meeting. Probably this week or next week, probably we'll discuss more about that. I created an epic for that, but that's a good news for us.
Yeah, that's great news. We definitely can use a lot of help there. So I think you said you created an epic around that. Like,
Yeah.
maybe we can take some time tomorrow and discuss that if they'll be here.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be curious to hear like what the plan is there, because anyway, I don't want to derail
Yeah,
this.
I think we'll have to guide them a little bit, probably. What's the best place to put the docs, things like that. I think it looks like they have the expertise to do the rest.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering about like, do we right, like right now we're just using GitHub for our documentation, right? Like,
Yeah.
Theoretically, right, we should be producing documentation and maybe a website and have it associated with a version and be able to look at documentation for different versions. And I'm sure that the structure of the documentation is woefully inadequate right now. Like, we could really use expertise there to help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so I'll start. So I'll just take 5 minutes because I've already shown this, and then Joseph gonna come on the CRD. So this is the final diagram, which I'm showing here. So here, I think I also showed it 2 weeks ago. I just changed the name of the clouds, naming as everybody mentioned. That I checked the ORAN document, and the reference document is also right there. It's work packet 6. Work group 6, it's work group 6 and page number 23, you can see specification version 4. And that now, instead of regional cloud, I'm calling it core cloud, where there are core network components. So here you have all the control plane components: UDR, USF, UDM, NRF, SMF, and AMF. For the moment, these are all the operators which will reside on each and every cloud. Right now, the way I did it was that the AMF and SMF operators were still getting deployed on the edge cloud, though they were not needed. But I can have different package variants in which that only UPF or GNB will be deployed on the edge cloud, and then the rest one will be deployed only on the core cloud. So this we have to do for R2. And then the other two clouds are edge cloud and the regional cloud. So in the regional cloud, there is CUCP. That's the control plane of the CU. It's virtualized control plane of the CU, let's say VCU. And then there is edge cloud, on which there is DU, UPF, and then the user plane of the CU of the CU, and then there will be the two UVs also, which we will connect with the DU and then eventually to the UPF, the CU, UP, and the UPF. And these UVs, they will reside in the same edge in the edge cloud. If we want, we can spin up a fourth cluster, and we can put the UV in that fourth cluster. But then it means that we will have ultimately 5 clusters running on the GCP machine, which we are using right now for CI, I think, which has 8 CPUs. So there will be 5 kind clusters running there, 4 for the workloads and 1 for Porsche. So that's it. So this is the deployment figure now.
Thanks, Sagar. I think the last meeting, did we vaguely remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, Did we say that we need to rename the edge to for edge or something like that, where the UE and DU are deployed?
So for this, that's why I'm referring to the document of ORAN to be more inclined and using their terminology, what they have in the diagram. I mentioned it right there, the reference document.
Okay.
I also mentioned that on the epic of discussion.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks.
Because they have different type of deployments for the user plane, depending on the kind of slice you have. So this is more, let's say, a low latency slice because all the user plane components are sitting at the edge.
Yes.
So I didn't really use associated far edge or anything. I just went off with the document of ORAN. But if anybody has any comments, of course, they're welcome.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Yeah.
So Sagar, one comment I had was with the core cloud. I mean, I think I'm assuming that you have your nephew also sitting there, or is it like, do you see it as another central cluster? I mean, it's good to show the nephew management component too.
Yeah, so
For completeness.
That's completely independent. So the management cluster I've not shown in the figure. I can put that to give a complete picture. So management cluster is out of it. So these are only 3 workload cluster. So core cloud will have
The R1 primarily had all this thing, what you show in central and regional as well, and then you only had like 3 clusters.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had 1 regional, 2 edges, and then you have 4 clusters. Yeah, 4 in total. So probably we could. I'm not sure. You want to add another cluster? Is it because of the implementation or something, or you just want to isolate the functions?
No, it was optional if we would like to also have more clusters to be managed by Nephew, So that's just optional. It's not mandatory. For the moment, let's say the UEs are residing in this figure in the edge cluster itself. If we want and if we would like, we can have another cluster to manage only the UEs, but that will increase that will have more complications on the networking side because that will add another extra layer of another VLAN for the UEs, let's say. So
yeah, no, I was not talking about. I think because these are all emulation, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I was just more think about the central cluster where, I mean, if you want to show the nephew as another cluster by itself, then it completes the picture. Or you add nephew to the same central cluster, and then you will have the 3 clusters that you show.
I think in this architecture splits what we did all in the regional cluster. It splits it into a core cloud and a regional cloud, and then it's got 1 edge cluster, whereas we had 2 or 3 edge clusters, I think, in our
2 edge clusters. Yeah,
2 edge clusters is the way. Yeah. So I think it all kind of just. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is that we should be able to create different architectures, based upon the requirements. Like, what do we want to demonstrate? I think is what you're asking, Ravi. Like, what are the architectures that we need that are going to create different that are going to affect how we do things, right? So like this is the way I think about it anyway. It's like we could create 20 different architectures. What are we going to learn new from each of those architectures for how we build Nephew? Or what are we going to demonstrate to our audience that's new and different and going to excite them? So I think those are the 2 different reasons to do 2 different architectures. One is to demonstrate something that is difficult to do in other platforms, or 2 is to exercise some material difference that's going to inform how we design our solution. So so those are the criteria I would use to judge what architecture we go with. Is there something new we need? And then of course we get the resources we need to create those different architectures. We could even have multiple packages that deploy different sets of architectures, that one with this split and one with it not split. I mean, I don't know. What do you all think? I guess. What do you think, Ravi?
No, exactly. My point was that are we creating clusters for creating sake of clusters? Are we showing some new features with that? So, I mean, it would be just another client cluster, and you're probably more workload cluster kind of resources, and to map the network functions to those. So, yeah, it was coming from the same point of view.
For test infra perspective, the kind cluster is all we can do for now, unless someone else is donating test hardware. Otherwise, I mean, we shouldn't restrict, but then, at this point, leverage enough your resources. That's all we have.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason SIG network architecture is called SIG network architecture is because I was hoping we would get guidance from that SIG as to, from a telco end user perspective, what are the architectures that we need to demonstrate and prove, and what are the ones that they are especially challenging maybe in other environments, or what are the ones that people are using in production, we need to show that we can provision them. Like, those are the kind of questions I'm curious about. So I think that for now, from my point of view, for now, this is fine. And whatever we do is fine until we get guidance and feedback that, hey, I'm not clear that you can do X, Y, and Z. Can you build an architecture that demonstrates that? So if the question was, do we split out those UEs into a separate cluster, the question that I come back with is, what would we learn from that? And if there's nothing, then the question is, what would our end users learn from that? And if it's nothing, then we don't do it.
Yeah, technically, see, UEs are, I mean, there's no notion of cluster, right? And in a physical sense, and in a realistic sense, so we're just emulating them. So that's why I'm saying that it doesn't make any sense to put UEs. There's nothing new you're demonstrating from a system perspective. So.
Yeah, I totally agree that. I mean, we can break more, let's say, on the other side, let's say running DU and CUP and UPF and other places, in each and all of them in different cluster. But the idea here was just to stick to, let's say, one architecture of ORAN and this show that how it will be there, like, let's say, a low latency kind of environment. So, I mean, in that terms, it's more like reusing what was there in R1 and renaming the clusters. So
okay, that's fine. I mean, I think we're good for now. We'll adjust it if we need to in the future. All right, so we're kind of running behind on time. I think you wanted to discuss the CRD. Is that the next?
Yes.
The next
so I'll give it back now to. I will let Joseph to share a screen.
Yeah. Okay. You can hear me, and right. I can share my screen now.
Yes, Joseph, we can hear you.
Yeah, you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically an initial version of the RAN, and we kept things which are really required for OAI, and the idea is to develop it parallelly, not to fix on
sorry,
this.
Joseph. It's
can.
At least for me, not really readable. Can we make it
Oh,
bigger?
okay, yeah, sure.
And is that the actual CRD? I find it's often easier if you have an example rather than a.
So example. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that also there. Yeah. You can see.
Yeah, that's much better. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So if you see, I mean, we just put very basic things which are required for OAI. What I want to say is that, but we would work on this parallelly, and I am thinking that the WG2 of SIG1 will work on it parallelly, and as we get more agreement on the CRD, then we can pull in those parameters in going forward. For now, I think we start with this and start building the controller code and do an end-to-end deployment. I think that was the priority when we started making this. And to do that, yeah.
So one of the things that, and this might be, so one of the things that, this is the deployment. I see this is the RAN deployment, so this is fine. But if you look at some of the things like params 3GPP, some of those things, I know at least like the PLMN stuff, some of those things need to be the same across a number of, across domains too, right? It's not just within RAN, it's
Right.
across a number of
Correct.
functions.
Yeah.
So one thing that eventually, or I don't know, maybe it's part of your proposal, is we wanted to see some of those things pulled out into separate structures that we could say put into the management cluster in the topology, and then it can get injected into all of those. Right? Because if we go back to our workflow, we take a whole bunch of individual little resources like IP claims and VLAN claims and interface resources, and we sort of compile them into a deployment resource that contains everything for a specific deployment. So I also want to see those individual components that are reusable across those different functions that end up being sort of compiled into this at some point. So am I clear?
Right. I think it's yeah. I think for example, the PLMN, maybe the splicing IDs probably can be even for the core network. I think PLMN would be used. So yeah. So I think these parameters we need to identify across multiple and probably define it in a generic way. I think, right, and it needs to be injected for the during the deployment. Like these are operator configurations for that particular area, and it needs to be injected if the deployment is happening in that area. That mechanism needs to be, that mechanism needs to be implemented. Yeah. So I mean, this is just the first step of grouping it at least right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. This is starting on the other side with what we want in the end.
Yeah. But John, I agree with you, right? So I was going to make the same comment, like this whole parameter 3GPP, we should basically use config refs or whatever other name we take in it. So rather than putting into NF deployment, it should be a config ref that basically is specific towards 3GPP. And then that's the way you solve it. And then because today NF deployment is really focused on the let's say more the infra side of things. So it's a bit of a mix, but so all this parameter 3GPP we should basically put as in a config ref. And that's how they would be linked to the deployment. And then you can have various implementations of them as well.
Right. I think initially we did put this in config refs, I think, but then I think there was discussion that config refs to be used for vendor specific.
No. That's a misconception. So config ref is.
So that I think that's maybe yeah. Right.
So config refs is used for, can be used for vendor, various things, but one of them is vendor specific, but they can also be used to augment existing deployment. Because see, the challenge that we have, right, is we are probably not the organization who is going to model all the freaking 3GPP parameters, right? And so we need to build a framework that is flexible such that people can extend it however they want to use it, right? And so if we start to be very specific on certain things, we are going to have a hard time keeping up with all of it because every customer will have different things and there is a gazillion of parameters. So I think we should aim for a model by which we can, where it's easily extendable, rather than be very specific on stuff. And that's how we will be able to scale. Because, for example, yesterday, I mean, so the presentation that I was going, or I probably will not give, but so yesterday, Tal made the point is we basically today use run deployment, right? So we used SMF deployment, UPF deployment, AMF deployment, right? But they under the hood, they all use the same, let's say, NF deployment. So the reason we did it, because we thought, okay, if you have multiple controllers on the same cluster, the kind, so basically you can only use kind and namespace basically to have a controller watch a given resource, right? So if you don't have that, let's say, distinction, then all of these controllers will get this CRs, and they have to filter them out whether they are relevant for them through another mechanism, right? So that's why we did it. But the consequence of it is that now for run, we need to have another one, right? So tomorrow we have for another one for something else and stuff like that. So for example, Atal, so that's one of the discussions that we need to have from an architecture point of view, is do we continue on this basis, or do we go for a model where we say it's NF deployment, right, for everything, and the implementation will be figured out on the controller using a certain mechanism, right? So for example, they use providers. So we can say there is a provider called run, right? And then you don't have to build a new CRD for every new network function on the planet, but you basically create just a provider reference, and then that's how you filter it. The consequence is, of course, that then you have to build in capabilities in the controller to be able to do so and stuff like that. But that's a conversation we should have in order, because otherwise for every new function that you need another CRD basically, which is expensive potentially. But so that's why I built this presentation, to have that conversation, because I think we have a deliverable in R2 to do multi-vendor and multiple parameters, and we start seeing it right now here. So that at least we understand and we make a decision, and there will be consequences based on the decision on how we move forward. But then I think it is clear on what we today as a community believe is the way forward. Right. You see?
So, okay, we only have about 10 minutes left, and I think we do need to cover the workshop stuff a little bit, but maybe we can book like 20 minutes tomorrow for this discussion, Wim. And we'll plan on try and keep the sprint discussion to 30 minutes, and book maybe 20 minutes for this discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. And the sooner we do it, the better, because we need it. I think we need it for this space. That's the reason why I did it. And it has then implications on the SDK, but yeah.
Okay. So Joseph, was there more you wanted to cover here? I'm sorry, we kind of derailed a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think so. I think we need to agree on this. I think then we can take it in that direction. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For I think till that is decided, probably we'll go ahead with what is there here, and as and when I think the decisions are made, I think we will align it. We will not make anything very specific to what is there in the CRD as of now, just to get the operator development ongoing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So
and just one more point to ask regarding the repo. So in case I have to commit the initial version of the controller code, should we create a repo? That's what I wanted to check.
So I don't recall what we discussed. So for APIs, they go into the Nefio API. So
yeah, there we will put the CRDs if there is any. I think we'll add it there. For I think for free 5GC, there's a free 5GC, and then there's a free 5GC packages, two repositories. So should we create another one, or should we create a common one and put everything there? Or?
So I don't know the current status of this discussion. Last time we talked, I thought the plan was to keep the OIA operators in your own repo. We can create a packages. What I think we're going to use the term blueprints dash whatever, I think was what we talked about, although I don't think we ever decided. So we can create if you want to put your operators in the Nefio project, I think that's okay. I mean, we'd have to, I guess I'll agree to it, but I wasn't sure if that's something you wanted to do or not. So
John, just to clarify, I think the way I understand is Sagar is going to do all the core operators, and then those core operators for OAI is going to reside in OAI. But Joseph is going to do the RAM stuff, But for the RAN stuff, he wants to put that under Nephia.
If it's APIs, you're going to API repo.
Yeah.
If
Not
the operators,
not under the
if
API.
Saga wants the operators to be external, that's okay. We can accommodate that.
No,
but
the
then,
only core operators are external. In this particular case, the core operators will be external. It will be in OAI
The
repo.
RAN operators will be
yeah,
in that.
we're okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we can create an OAI repo. Let's we only have 5 minutes left, and I want to give Tal a chance to at least raise the topic of the workshop. So let's table this and either talk about it tomorrow or over Slack. So Tal, do you want to jump into the workshop issue?
Sure. Yeah, we don't have much time, but let me quickly go over the agenda and tell you what our mission is regarding that. Let me share my screen quickly. Okay. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. So hope you guys the link to the let me share the link to in the chat just to make it easier. So the agenda is forming for the summit, and there are both on day 1 and day 2 SIG specific sessions, as well as deep dives, right? That will involve, I think, mostly participants here. We need to fill it with content. So the idea is, I guess, if we need to decide together how to do this. Do we want people to make proposals for what they want to present? Right. The sessions are 45 minutes each on day 1 for the 3 SIGs. So we'll need to decide how to manage our time. So I have this on the agenda for all 3 SIGs. So for all 3 SIGs, independently, they'll discuss what to do with their time. I raised the issue with Kandan that maybe, 45 minutes per SIG might not be necessary, right? Because I don't know if SIG 3 will have 45 minutes worth of stuff to really present for R2 and beyond. And it might be better to maybe join these sessions together or change their length or something like that. So think about that. So again, we don't have time to discuss these things. I'm just raising the topics. We have a workshop, and the time says here that it's 45 minutes for the workshop, but consider that we have time until 5 p.m. Right? So we can change this around a little bit, because I kind of feel like 45 minutes for a workshop where people bring their laptops and log into something is probably not enough. It takes probably 45 minutes just to get people on board and logged in and whatever it is, just from experience. So so we have to plan what we want to do in the workshop. This will mostly be our SIG 2, of course. For day 2, we have the deep dive topics, right? So they're different from the report. So day 1 is really focused on what are we planning, and day 2 is deep dives into basically what. So we didn't specify if it's R1 or R2. I mean, we can do a deep dive. For example, the CRD discussion presentation that Wim has right now, and it face to face, we could probably be more efficient in our discussion, for the people who are there.
Hopefully we've got it resolved before then.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. I'm just giving an example of like a kind of topic that might be relevant for a deep dive. So a deep dive could be a discussion, right? It doesn't have to be just a presentation on what we're doing. It could be more open, at least that's how I'm thinking of it, right? Because a deep dive on a topic, well, we have a lot of unresolved topics, right? So, for example, talking about Helm and Operator SDK and where we are right now and where we're heading, and, so we can do that.
The issue I have, and I raised this to Kandan, but I didn't get progress. I didn't get. Is that like I have certain topics that are very deep, very controversial, that I would like to sit in a room with, the people who are really interested and aware and sort of have a very frank discussion about should we, change this, should we change that? But it's not a topic for 150 people in a room, right? It's a topic
Right.
for half a dozen to a dozen people who are on this call,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure what to do about those things. We might have to, and I talked about
I have an idea. So I have a similar topic, and I imagine a lot of the deep dives, just by the nature of being deep dive, they won't be interesting for everybody who's
exactly
interested in more broad things. So one limitation we only have one big room. So we can't have breakout sessions in separate rooms. It's a very nice room though, in Google's new offices. But I think what can happen is that people can take a break. People are not interested in that particular. I don't expect people to. The agenda is very packed. There's not a lot of breaks. The coffee breaks are like 15 minutes here and there. So I don't expect everybody to go to absolutely every session. Especially the deep dive, or all of the deep dives won't be relevant for absolutely everybody coming. I mean, there are more engineers and there are architects and there are more executives, right? And will be coming. So yeah, I think to me, it seems okay that if, John, myself, somebody else has a deep dive on the topic and other people aren't interested, they can just take a break, right? And come back later. So the plan is, the agenda is right now general, but we would want to actually break this down and show the kind of sub agenda for this particular deep dive, and try to give timing for each, and then people can decide what to come to and what not to come to. So there's actually a lot of content we need to do here. It's coming in quick, the summit. So we really need to discuss this in depth, what we're going to do. Let's continue on Slack maybe. I'll try to maybe, take a lead and kind of push people to do something. And, anybody can on Slack, just make proposals. So on our SIG2 Slack, I think. And let's try to coalesce something as soon as we can, right? It's getting very close.
Yeah.
And, we can also put a placeholder, right?
Everybody. Yep, we're over time. Thank you all. Sorry,
Yep.
the crammed meeting. Same time, same place tomorrow, okay? Vamshi, your hand's up. Is it quick?
Same Zoom link, basically.
Same Zoom link,
okay.
Same time.
Okay.
Do we have the architecture meeting same time? Or?
No, that's
Currently not. Yeah.
I stole the spot.
Okay, sure, thanks.
We already stole it. They cannot take it anymore now.
Exactly.
They will
I
never
put it on
be
the
able to
calendar
get it
too.
anymore.
It's fine.
Yeah, so the Zoom scheduling disallow us to have more than one, so they can no longer schedule it on that slot.
Right. Thank you, everybody. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.